My name is Isabella, and for 15 years of marriage, I thought I had everything I could want: a loving husband, a beautiful home, and a secret business that filled me with pride. But I never imagined that my 15th wedding anniversary would be the day my life would take an unexpected turn. It all began on what was supposed to be a special night. I had dressed with particular care, hoping to celebrate our anniversary at the restaurant where Marco, my husband, had proposed to me years ago. I wore a simple but elegant dress, nothing ostentatious, as we always maintained a modest lifestyle with Marco's university professor salary. "Are you ready?" Marco appeared in the doorway, adjusting his tie. I noticed something different in his expression, a coldness I didn't recognize. "Yes, love. Are we going to Bella Luna, as usual?" "No, tonight we're going somewhere different. The Mirador." His choice surprised me. The Mirador was the most exclusive restaurant in the city, located on the top floor of the Royal Crown Hotel, my hotel, though that was something Marco didn't know. For 15 years, I had kept secret that I was the owner of the city's most prestigious hotel, inherited from my father. "But Marco, that place is too expensive for us." I protested, maintaining my facade of a middle-class wife. "Don't worry about that," he replied coldly. "Tonight is special." Something in his tone troubled me. During the taxi ride, Marco barely spoke to me, absorbed in his phone. Upon arriving at the hotel, my heart was racing, not just from the nerves of seeing my staff while pretending to be just another customer, but from the growing feeling that something wasn't right. The restaurant was splendid as always. The city lights sparkled through the windows, creating a romantic atmosphere. However, we had barely sat down when Marco placed his phone on the table and looked at me intently. "Isabella, we need to talk." Those words. Always those words. "What's wrong?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "I want a divorce." The world seemed to stop. The city lights became blurry as I processed his words. "What? Why? After 15 years?" Marco sighed, as if I were a child who couldn't understand something obvious. "I met someone. She's different. She has ambition, success. She's not like you, content with being a simple housewife." The irony of his words hit me like a slap. For years I had kept my true identity secret, not out of shame, but because I wanted Marco to love me for who I was, not for my money. My father had taught me that lesson. Money attracts the wrong people, Isabella. Find someone who loves you for yourself. And I thought I had found that in Marco, a university professor who seemed more interested in his books than in material possessions. How wrong I was. "Who is she?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "Victoria Mondragon." Of course. Victoria Mondragon, the new dean of the university, known for her wealthy family and high society connections. I had seen her at social events, always bragging about her achievements and inherited fortune. "How long?" My voice sounded distant, as if it belonged to someone else. 6 months. At least he had the decency to look ashamed. "We're getting married next month. Here, actually, at the Royal Crown." I almost laughed. Of all places, they had chosen my hotel for their wedding. Fate has a twisted sense of humor. And I suppose she's paying for everything? "Isabella, don't be petty. Victoria has the means to give us the life I always dreamed of. Travel, luxury, connections, everything you could never give me." At that moment, something broke inside me. It wasn't pain, it was indignation, anger contained for years while I played the role of the modest, compliant wife. And the 15 years we spent together? Our plans, our dreams. Marco shrugged, a gesture that seemed incredibly cruel in its casualness. People change, evolve. I evolved. I stood up from the table, my legs shaking slightly. "I understand. I hope you find what you're looking for, Marco." I left the restaurant with my head held high, ignoring the concerned looks from my staff, who knew me as the owner but had sworn to keep the secret. In the elevator, as I descended alone, I made a decision. For 15 years, I had kept my true identity secret out of love. Now, that same secret would become my revenge. The following days were a whirlwind. Marco moved in with Victoria, sending me the divorce papers through his lawyer. I didn't protest, didn't fight. I signed everything without argument, to his evident surprise. Meanwhile, I began to plan. As owner of the royal crown, I had access to every detail of their wedding planning. Victoria had reserved the most exclusive hall, demanding the best of everything, the most expensive flowers, the most elaborate menu, the best view of the city. A week before the wedding, I received a call from my general manager, Carmen. Mrs. Isabella, Miss Mondragon is demanding to meet the hotel owner. She says she wants to personally ensure everything will be perfect for her wedding. I smiled. The moment had come. Schedule a meeting for tomorrow, Carmen. I think it's time for the bride to meet the owner of the royal crown. The next day, I dressed in my best suit, an ensemble that cost more than Marco's monthly salary. My hair, normally pulled back in a simple bun, was perfectly styled. It was time for the world to meet the real Isabella Vega. When I entered the meeting room, Victoria was standing with her back turned, admiring the city view. Marco was at her side, his hand possessively on her waist. "Good morning," I said softly. "I'm Isabella Vega, owner of the Royal Crown Hotel." The sound of my voice made Marco turn so quickly he almost lost his balance. His face turned as pale as if he'd seen a ghost. "Isabella?" His voice was barely a whisper. Victoria looked between us, confused. "You know each other?" "Oh, yes," I replied with a serene smile. "Marco and I know each other very well. In fact, until recently, he was my husband." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria looked at Marco, then at me, her face moving from confusion to understanding and finally to fury. "Your ex-wife is the owner of the royal crown?" Her voice rose several octaves. "The same woman you described as a simple housewife?" I sat calmly at the head of the table. "Please sit down. We have much to discuss about your wedding." "Isabella, Marco began, but I raised a hand to silence him. "No, Marco. For 15 years, I kept my identity secret because I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for my money. Clearly, I was wrong about you." Victoria collapsed into a chair, her face a mask of humiliation. "All this time, you've been the owner?" "Yes. The hotel was a gift from my father. I've personally managed it for the last 20 years, building its reputation from scratch. While I played the modest wife you so despised, Marco." Marco sank into his chair, his face a mixture of shock and shame. "Why did you never tell me?" "Why?" I laughed softly. "Because I wanted a husband who would love me for myself, not for my money. Clearly, I was wrong about you. You prefer to chase others' wealth than build something together." Victoria stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. We'll cancel the wedding, find another venue." "Of course," I said softly. "Although I'm afraid it will be difficult to find another place on such short notice. And of course, according to the contract, you'll forfeit the deposit." "This is a conflict of interest," Marco shouted, finally finding his voice. "You can't do this." "Can't I?" "The contract was reviewed by your lawyers. Everything is in order. Besides," I added with a sweet smile, "didn't you want to get married in the most exclusive hotel in the city? Here's your chance." I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "By the way, Victoria, you should know that Marco has a pattern. When we met, I was the rich heiress and he was the ambitious professor. When he found someone with more money, he discarded me. Who knows? Maybe he's already looking for his next evolution." I left the meeting room with my head high, leaving the sound of their argument behind me. As I walked to my office, my phone vibrated with a message from Carmen. "Miss Mondragon just canceled the wedding. What should we do with the arrangements?" I smiled as I replied, "Donate the flowers to the children's hospital. And schedule a meeting with the management team. It's time for them to officially meet their boss." The following weeks were a whirlwind of changes. The news of my true identity spread quickly through the city. Marco tried to contact me several times, sending messages full of apologies and explanations, but I ignored them all. Victoria, for her part, disappeared from the social scene for a while. According to rumors, She had ended her relationship with Marco after discovering he had been investigating other wealthy women while they were together. A month later, while reviewing financial reports in my office, no longer needing to hide my true occupation, I received an unexpected visit. "Mrs. Isabella," Carmen said from the door, "Mr. Vega is here to see you." My father entered, his wrinkled face lighting up with a smile. My little entrepreneur. I stood to hug him, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne. "Dad, I wasn't expecting to see you today." "How could I stay away after hearing what happened?" He sat across from my desk, his eyes shining with pride. "You finally showed them who you really are." "You were right, Dad," I admitted. "About keeping the money secret, about testing people. Though it took me 15 years to learn the lesson." My father took my hand across the desk. "Sometimes the most important lessons are the hardest to learn. But look at you now, strong, independent, successful in your own right. Your mother would be so proud." I felt tears forming in my eyes. You know, for all these years, I kept my identity secret because I thought it was what he needed. But really, I was the one who needed to prove something to herself. And what did you learn? That I don't need to pretend to be less than I am for someone to love me. That true success isn't in what you have, but in what you build. And that sometimes the best revenge is simply being who you are. My father smiled, his eyes shining with pride and a touch of amusement. "And I suppose being the owner of the hotel where your ex-husband planned his wedding doesn't hurt." I laughed, feeling a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. Let's say it was the icing on the cake. That night, as I watched the city from my office on the top floor of the Royal Crown, I thought about how much my life had changed in the past few weeks. I was no longer the submissive wife, pretending to be less than I was. I was Isabella Vega, owner and CEO of the Royal Crown Hotel, a woman who had finally learned to value herself. My phone vibrated with a message from Marco. "Can we talk?" "Please. I miss you." I deleted it without responding. Some people never learn, but I had. And my most valuable lesson was that true power isn't in money or status, but in being authentically who you are. As the city lights sparkled under the night sky, I smiled. My hotel would continue to be the place where couples celebrated their love, where dreams came true. But now, finally, I was also part of that story, not as the professor's secret wife, but as the strong, independent woman I was always meant to be. And that, perhaps, was the best revenge of all. Time passed, and my story became something of an urban legend in the city. People whispered about the owner of the Royal Crown, the woman who had kept her empire secret for years only to reveal it at the most dramatic moment possible. 6 months after the incident, I received an unexpected invitation. It was for Victoria's wedding, not to Marco, but to a businessman she had met at one of her conferences. The attached note read, "Thank you for opening my eyes. Would you be our host?" I smiled as I wrote my response. Life has an interesting way of coming full circle. Marco, for his part, tried to rebuild his life. Last I heard, he had transferred to a university in another city. Apparently, being known as the man who had left the owner of the Royal Crown for money wasn't good for his academic reputation. My father was right all those years ago. Money can buy a luxury hotel, but it can't buy respect, dignity, or true love. Those are things you have to build for yourself. Now, when I walk through the halls of my hotel, I no longer pretend to be someone else. My staff greets me with genuine respect, not for my title, but for the person I am. The couples who celebrate their weddings here know my story, and some even ask for advice. "How did you know it was time to reveal the truth?" they often ask. My answer is always the same. When I understood that hiding who you really are for love isn't love at all. And so, the Royal Crown continues to be the place where dreams come true. Only now, finally, I'm part of my own dream. I'm no longer the professor's secret wife, or the heiress hiding her identity. I'm simply Isabella Vega, a woman who learned that true power isn't in what you have, but in who you are. And that's a lesson worth more than all the hotels in the world. Life goes on, and each day brings me new adventures and challenges as a businesswoman and as a woman. But I'm no longer afraid to face them being myself. Because in the end, the best revenge wasn't humiliating Marco or ruining his wedding. It was freeing myself from the need to be less to make someone else happy. And that's a victory worth celebrating, preferably in the best hotel in the city. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.